Welcome to the Wilson Wealth Show, a thought-provoking show about building wealth in the new economy. Each week, members of the Wilson Wealth team and their guests will discuss how to navigate the world of personal finance, stocks, real estate, and entrepreneurship to help you build wealth in the new economy. And now, here is your host, Ciera McCosh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wilson Wealth Show. My name is Ciera, and today I have Maurice and Ablavi with me. How you guys doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm great. And you, Maurice?
I am doing awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. Always good to hear. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Today's topic is the wedding hustle, how America's wedding industry gets rich. So let's start out with some basic figures. The wedding industry generates about $60 billion a year in the United States and ceremony-related expenses. So this figure doesn't include the honeymoon, which is estimated between $4 and $8 billion a year. The market size measured by revenue of the wedding services industry is $55.1 billion. This is in 2020. And in the U.S., weddings cost an average of $33,000, and this is in 2019. And this is expenses all related to engagement rings, ceremony, reception, and all of that. Of course, honeymoon is not included, which is also extremely expensive. So let's talk about it. That sounds like a lot, and it is. The wedding industry is very, very expensive, and you can't even have a cheap wedding without it costing at least 10 to 15K. And that's considered like scraping the barrel, which is crazy to me, right? So let's go ahead and move into the wedding markup. So this is a completely real thing, and I hate it, but it's real. Vendors charge more for the same services if they know the event they are catering is a wedding. So venues and photographers are the worst offenders of this. I know in Australia, they did a really cool experiment where they went in asking for two different services. So they asked, hey, I want to rent out this venue for a 40th birthday. And hey, I want to rent out this venue for a wedding. And when they went in for the wedding, they were charged $8,000 more for an identical function. They were just told it was a wedding instead of a 40th birthday, which is absolutely crazy. They use secret shoppers to do this. Like they went into bakeries and they were like, hey, I need a cake for a birthday. And hey, I need a cake for a wedding. And they were upcharged at like 2 to 3 times as much, which is absolutely ridiculous. And it just depends on the place. Like they're allowed to do this. It's completely legal for them to just be like, oh, hey, you're having a wedding, this really important thing to you that you're definitely not going to say no to, no matter how much I charge you. Yeah, well, you're going to pay double.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an absolute scam,
Absolutely.
So, yeah, but we still do it, Why do we do it? Ablavi, why do we do it?
Well, some people still do it, right?
Yeah.
I guess it's fair to say the majority of people still do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, not I think, but I know that it's because of pressure from parents and your friends coming from an African culture, being Liberian. Weddings, celebrations are big. Weddings are even bigger. So I can totally understand why people feel that pressure. Personally, I don't feel like that pressure is right because I personally feel like that experience is between those two people because they're going to have to live with that day in and day out, right? Call me weird or an outlier, but that's just how I personally feel. So
me too.
Yeah, definitely. I have no plans in pressuring my son about any kind of wedding when that time comes, which I hope is very, 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 I know it's going to be very, very long from now, considering he's But so that being said, some people also look at it like it's a once in a lifetime experience and they want to, go all out for it and they want it to be special, which I completely understand. However, at the same time, unfortunately, all weddings aren't forever, right? So you could find yourself having a second wedding. Hopefully not. Hopefully, you're not in that category, but that is very real and very likely as well. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. However, Ciera, I did want to ask you about one point that you made in the beginning. Did
Sure.
you say that $33,000 figure did not include a honeymoon?
No, it doesn't include a honeymoon.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to, because that's a pretty big number. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure I heard you right. Okay, wow.
No, I know that, and that is considered an average wedding, like on the lower side.
Really?
You know, on the upper side, we're looking at like $100,000 if you're like a big spender.
Yeah.
You know, if you want all the bells and whistles, but if you're cutting corners, but you still want to have all the basic traditions of a wedding, then you're looking at like $30,000 at least, which is crazy.
Wow.
And that is on the lower end. Like people who get married for like 10 to 15,000, they are scraping. Like,
Wow.
and I think that that's a very significant amount of money. To me, that should be a very nice wedding. If you're spending $15,000 on a wedding, you should have all the bells and whistles. But when you break it down, which we do have an infographic that we'll have on our website, you should be able to look at it right now. You can see that all of those different things add up like to quite a lot. Like your venue is on average like $15,000. And I know I had a friend get married recently, and she was able to get the venue for very, very cheap, and it was still $6,000, and that was considered cheap.
Wow.
Yes. Like that's pure insanity to me. Like, okay, here's one thing you guys have to understand. I am not a person who personally believes in these types of weddings just because of the wedding industry. Like the wedding industry is just scamming everybody, in my own personal opinion. And I kind of don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to get scammed, because I want to have like a nice, beautiful wedding for all my friends and family. And I do feel like it's a lot of pressure that you're putting on the bride and groom. And people expect a lot from you if you're getting married. And, you know, on average, I feel like they also don't care about your marriage very much. So what are you doing it for? You know?
Right. No, definitely. Now, Maurice, do you feel like as a man, the pressure is different as far as having a lavish ceremony than it is for women?
Definitely. I think my experience was that I let my mom and my fiance at the time plan it. And so I was largely just a participant in the ceremony, more so than the planning. And then just going to other people's weddings, I started to notice, or at least come to the conclusion, that you can pretty much send all the men down to the reception hall or wherever you're going to have the food and let the women attend the ceremony, because the men are just there to kind of like eat, talk sports, and go home. And given that weddings are typically during sporting events, you know, the men will be checking their phones, looking at scores, things of that nature. But yeah, just going back to your original question, none of that, you know, parlays into any type of pressure on the male in this respect. So it's really a party of one when it comes to the pressure and just the expectations and the weight of the day, if you will, if something goes wrong.
Well, I do agree with that to like a degree. I agree to a degree. But I feel like, you know, as like the future husband, you are still getting some pressure because your future wife is having all this pressure, and she's very stressed out, and she's going to let you know that she's very stressed out and that this is a lot. So I wouldn't say that you're not getting like any pressure from it, but it's not something that I feel like the average man, hence average straight man, really cares about. You know, you're just kind of there to be there, and you don't really care what it looks like. And you know, I feel like women do have a lot of pressure to make it like wonderful and beautiful, and it has to be like a Pinterest board or people are going to judge them, you know?
Sure. No, definitely.
And it shouldn't be like that. Like weddings, I feel like have turned into keeping up with the Joneses. It's like you have to have the most lavish wedding on the block. It has to be good. The food has to be great. It's got to be open bar. People are going to think you're cheap, even though that costs how much?
Oh yeah. That open bar thing is real.
Yeah. The open bar is like at least 10K.
Yeah.
I'm completely serious. Like that's just for the bar. You're spending $10,000 on the bar. And that's if you want to have good alcohol. Say you skimp out on the bar a little bit just to save some money and you don't have like top shelf. People are going to judge you for that too. you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I laugh about the open bar comment because being Liberian, I have been in situations where, and I'm not a drinker, and no knock to anybody who is, right? But
Hmm.
in the Liberian culture, specifically in my family, being a drinker is the norm. So I am definitely an outlier. So I have seen situations where if there's no liquor at the wedding or if it's no open bar, people get talked about. You know what I mean? So that whole open bar thing is really, really a thing that adds to the cost. Absolutely. Definitely.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's just something that's like expected. I've seen like posts from
Yeah.
people being like, I'm gonna wait to get married till I can afford to have all this stuff,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I would never do that to my friends and family, make them pay for their alcohol. I would never do that.
Yeah.
And then it makes everybody else feel bad, like, oh man, I can't afford that. I guess I gotta wait to get married, which is not fair because some people just want to get their lives started, you know?
Exactly. And I think that the enormity of the union and the marriage and the fact that you're pledging forever to somebody totally gets lost in the details of the planning process. I know I was
Hmm.
very guilty when I was planning my wedding, which we ended up not having a traditional type wedding. It was just non-traditional in our home at the time, and literally it was 4 people including us. So got a lot of flack for that. People really wanted that ceremony and that reception and all that stuff. What I find so interesting about that is there's all this pressure, but there's very few people, if anyone, that's willing to help you create this monstrosity of an event in terms of
Exactly.
financially.
Exactly. Because, that whole tradition of like your parents helping you with the wedding, yeah, like a lot of times parents will help you some, but people are getting married later in life now.
Right.
And you're getting past the age to where it's acceptable for your parents to be like, oh, yeah, we'll totally pay for your wedding.
Of course.
Maybe they'll give you some money towards it, but once you like hit your late 20s, early 30s, they're kind of like, no, you're an adult.
Right.
No, people still do get married young, but like I would say on average, people aren't getting married at 18, 19 anymore. And so you have money to pay for your own wedding. So I would say, yeah, family members are less inclined to help you out there for sure.
Right.
And that whole tradition of like, oh, the bride's father pays for everything, that's thrown out the window. People, at least in America, I would say we don't do that here as much anymore.
Exactly. And the reality of it is the bride's father or her family can't afford these prices.
No, they absolutely can't. It's like
Right.
it ends up being like an effort amongst everyone who really cares. Like bride and groom, and then their parents are trying to figure it out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's honestly, so here's what I think about it. I feel like the people who really care about the ceremony being extra nice are like your parents.
Right.
And the guests really just care about the reception being extra nice. You know, like
Right.
the guests are all about, okay, it's got to be open bar and the food's got to be good and I got to be able to dance and get as drunk as I want. And I feel like a lot of people are there like, oh yeah, we're happy that you're getting married, but it's just a big party to them. Like,
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's controversial to say,
It's the truth.
but yeah, like people don't really care that like you're doing this for love and stuff. They just want all the bells and whistles so they can have a good time, have an excuse to party hard. It's
Absolutely. And to me, and that's why I feel so strongly that you should not succumb to any pressure. I don't feel like, as those who are not getting married, you should inflict pressure on those who are.
yeah,
Me personally, I don't feel like parents should inflict pressure on their children. I think that the focus needs to be more around the enormity of committing your life to someone.
oh yeah. And
As
I
a,
feel like people get very entitled when
oh,
it comes to
absolutely.
weddings,
Yeah,
especially like close relatives and close friends
uh-huh.
to the
Yeah.
bride and groom. They
Oh,
start to
yeah.
get entitled. They want to invite who they want.
Oh,
And
yeah. Oh
then,
my gosh. Yeah. 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 I
oh
still have family that's mad at me because I did not have a traditional wedding.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a serious thing. Now, don't get me wrong. at some point it would be nice to do like a vow renewal or something like that. But
Oh yeah.
I just feel like when and if we do something like that, it's going to be on our terms.
Yes.
So,
and it should be.
And that's how I feel the whole wedding process should be.
Yeah. No, it really should. And it's kind of just turned into a whole nother thing. It's not
Right.
about two people getting married and falling in love anymore and just having a nice little ceremony and a little celebration afterwards. It's become this giant monster. And people really do, I this is kind of funny, but I kind of compare how people react to weddings the way that they react to hotel rooms. You know how like you go into a hotel room, I'm even guilty of this too. You go into a hotel room and then suddenly nothing is your responsibility anymore. And you expect the world. Like they're like, "Oh, hey, can you pick up your towel, and use it again?" Like, no. Give me a fresh towel. I'm going to throw this on the floor,
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's the same mentality. People walk into a wedding, they become very entitled and they're just like, what? I have to pay for drinks? Oh, this food isn't as good as I thought it would be. Oh my God, we're packing it up already. They couldn't pay for the extra hours. Like,
Right.
And then, the bride and groom feel that. They definitely feel that. And they feel bad.
Right. Definitely.
And then it becomes a stressful day that they don't even get to appreciate. It's all about everybody else.
Absolutely. And I feel like social media has just made the pressure. Social media is pressure all of its own because you want the social media worthy photos and all that stuff as well. So it's just an ongoing thing. And you really have to be strong-minded to not get caught up in all of that, because ultimately I would think that it's about the success of your union as opposed to a certain block of time within one day.
Absolutely. And I cannot tell you how many people who I know have been married tell me that they didn't get to enjoy their wedding day at all.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And there are people who didn't even get to like eat their own food or try their own cake at the wedding because they were too busy like running around trying to do everything themselves to make everybody else happy.
Sure.
I don't want that.
Definitely.
I really don't want that. That's why I'm strong on like, let's just elope. Maybe later in life we'll have like a ceremony for our friends and family, parents, when we can afford it.
Sure.
But if I just want to get started with my family and my life, I'm just going to do it.
No, definitely, definitely. And I feel like that's why people are starting to do like these surprise weddings whereby you think you're maybe going to a dinner party and the bride and groom end up getting married. And that way they're doing it the way they want to do it. And they're not feeling all this unnecessary pressure from everybody involved. Have you heard of those, Ciera?
Yes. And I love that idea.
Absolutely.
Absolutely love it. And they're always kind of funny too. You show, like, I know I saw a few stories of people who did it on Halloween and they said it, come in costume, we're having a giant costume party. And then it turns out it's their wedding. Love it.
Wow. That is so funny. And I mean, that just nips all the drama in the bud right there.
Yes.
Over with.
There's no pressure, because I also don't like the whole mentality around like bridesmaids and groomsmen and like all these parties that you have to have. And, all these gifts that are expected. It just becomes a thing where everybody is just holding so much resentment for each other. Because you're just going through the motions with all of this expensive planning and these expensive parties and gifts. And you're just like, for what?
Exactly. And it ends up ruining friendships and family relationships and all that stuff all over one day.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've talked to people in like workers who work in like wedding dress shops. And, at the time, we were getting ready for a friend's wedding and like there was like a little spat and I walked up and I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, and she's like, oh, please. We see this constantly. Everybody always loses a friend when they're going through a wedding. There's always one bridesmaid that walks out. It happens every time. And I'm like, it's that common? Like, that's kind of messed up, but it's so stressful and it's financially stressful on the bridesmaids and groomsmen too.
Yeah.
And it really does. It splits up friendships. It starts fights. It builds up resentment. And it's supposed to be a happy time, you know?
Right. Definitely. Definitely.
And if we're circling back to the money portion of it, think of how much all of that costs too. You got to add that on too. The cost of like an engagement party, a bridal shower, the bachelorette, the bachelor party. It's all very expensive for both parties.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have all this drama that occurs. So it's like you're paying to have fallouts with your family, friends.
Yeah.
Look good doing it on that day, though.
Yes, like the pictures turned out great, but man, did we lose some people on the way.
I know. Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of The Wedding Hustle. Stay tuned next week for part 2 of The Wedding Hustle.
Thank you for listening to the Wilson Wealth Show, a thought-provoking show about building wealth in the new economy. Each week, members of the Wilson Wealth team and their guests will discuss how to navigate the world of stocks, real estate, and entrepreneurship to help you build wealth in the new economy. Please join us next time on the Wilson Wealth Show.